What's up everyone, this is Midnight Strike 3625, welcoming you guys back to the ACDC discography review. And today we're going to be taking a look at a very special release that wasn't actually released during the time it was recorded. That is, of course, in the Bonfire collection. But for all intents and purposes today, we are going to specifically be looking at two of the discs right there. Let There Be Rock, the movie, live in Paris. Recorded in Paris, of course, in 1979. This is the final album with Bon Scott as the lead vocalist in the band's entire career. It's the last recorded live album that they recorded with Bon Scott, and it, of course, went along with the movie ACDC Let There Be Rock, which is a phenomenal concert outing, and I'm actually surprised they didn't do a Walk All Over You music video for Highway to Hell with this footage right here. It is a phenomenal movie. I highly recommend that everyone watch it. It should be on YouTube or something, and if you can't get the DVD/Blu-ray of it, then watch it on YouTube. But I highly recommend getting this right here. It is really good quality, and it actually has better quality than the CDs that come with the Epic Remaster, at least, of the Bonfire edition of the album. So, to get started, this album was recorded in 1979 at Paris in a tiny little arena compared to some of the later arenas they would do post-Castle Donington days, but I digress. This is a very good venue for the band, especially a band that was getting its start, kind of gaining momentum at the time, only to kind of be snuffed out by the demise of Bon Scott. But at the same time, when Brian Johnson came in, it was more of a renewal or a rebirth, a phoenix rising from the ashes. But this would be, like I said, the last release of Bon Scott's before he died. And unfortunately, it wasn't released until after he died. But then again, that is history for you. How is the actual album, you might be asking? Well, as any AC/DC live album, I would say that there are a lot of solos and a lot of actually extensive dead time in songs such as Bad Boy Boogie, which runs 13 minutes or so. But if you had watched the AC/DC movie, Let There Be Rock, you would know that it's just Angus Young putting on a show for everyone, so it's actually easier to listen to the song with that in mind, but you're still going to be fast-forwarding through a lot of the dead time. So it's not like it's filled up with a lot of solos. So that's really the only gripe that I have with some of these songs, is they run on for far too long, and regardless of whether or not it's just them messing around on stage or a solo or something to that effect, I feel like some of these songs could have been slimmed down a little bit, and that was my main problem as well with Live at Donington, that a lot of people took issue with. But you know what? It's my opinion for a reason, I guess, and this is my review. So, as far as this album goes, we'll just look at the back right here. It's got Livewire, Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be, Shot Down in Flames, Sin City, Walk All Over You, and I messed up these two right here, I realized that. Bad Boy Boogie, The Jack, Highway to Hell, Girls Got Rhythm, High Voltage, Whole Lotta Rosie, Rocker, TNT, and Let There Be Rock. So it is interesting and worthy enough to note that on this album edition right here, the DVD/Blu-ray, it does not include TNT in the set list because they never played TNT during this time. For some reason, they felt when they were remastering Bonfire, or at least putting a compilation together in 1997, that it needed an extra song. And I am glad that they added TNT, because this is a good version of TNT. Not necessarily sure where they recorded it, but it is a good live version of TNT, and it's the only official TNT live with Bon Scott on a recorded live album that you will find pretty much anywhere. All the other ones are Brian Johnson. So that is interesting. If you want to hear what TNT sounded like with Bon Scott on a studio album, there you go. Normally, back in the day, Bon Scott and the band AC/DC would play TNT a little bit slower and a little bit more bluesy to kind of get the edge into it, just reiterate the fact that it's a very edgy song, and they would play it very slow. But this one is sped up to the point where they're just trying to rock out, they're having a good time, and it is a really hard and heavy song as well. And they would continue to play it like this even with Brian Johnson at the helm, and it's a little bit more fitting with Brian Johnson, but it's interesting to see them play it like they played it with Brian Johnson, but earlier with Bon Scott. Another thing that is very interesting to note about this album right here, these two albums right here, these two albums, is the fact that it is the only live material recorded with Bon Scott to feature Highway to Hell songs on it. As I mentioned before, they were coming off the heels of If You Want Blood, You've Got It, so that's the only reason why they didn't release a second live album the next year, because that would seem a little bit redundant. I kind of wish they would have released it a little bit earlier than they did, and in a separate format. But as far as the actual studio recordings of Highway to Hell versus what we have here, I would say that they're pretty evenly matched. I mean, I gotta say, I love AC/DC live, but as far as their studio recordings go, sometimes the studio recordings are elevated much higher than the live ones. But in this case, I gotta say, I like them pretty much even, much such as in the case of If You Want Blood, You've Got It. My favorite live album of all time. Not even my favorite AC/DC live album, but it's my favorite live album of all time, including AC/DC. So some of these songs come very close, especially Highway to Hell on here, Shot Down in Flames, Girls Got Rhythm, Walk All Over You, of course, and I gotta say Live Wire is one of my favorites on here as well. TNT, even though it doesn't appear on here. Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be packs a little bit more of a punch on this album than it did in If You Want Blood, You've Got It, but I digress. I prefer the If You Want Blood, You've Got It version a little bit more. Let There Be Rock isn't as long as the version found on If You Want Blood, You've Got It, but it still has a lot of soloing in it, and they still play it very fast-paced. Bon Scott definitely has a little bit of a more raspy voice than he did in previous years, but that is a part of the experience. And I gotta say, some of the concert footage in the movie version of it and some of the backstage interviews are very fun and very, well, informative to watch. So, as far as this being the last album before Bon Scott died, I have to say it's a little bit interesting because it was recorded like 2 months before he died. So then he died 2 months after this was recorded. It was never released until 1997. The only way you could experience AC/DC live in Paris 1979 was through a VHS copy of this, which actually also came out after he died in, I believe, 1980 or 1981. I'm not necessarily sure about the dates. But Bon Scott would die of intoxication. He choked on his own vomit in the back of his car, and he was found the next morning, unfortunately. And the band actually thought, briefly, that they were going to have to disband. So, with that in mind, they felt like their entire identity was on the line, and that they couldn't exactly move forward with Bon Scott's vision. Bon Scott, without him at the helm, and without his writing credits, they couldn't necessarily do all of the things that they had been doing for the last couple of years. Well, they briefly thought about disbanding, but then they immediately discounted that idea and got Brian Johnson at the helm, and the rest is history. As far as this album as a live album goes, I am going to give it a 9 out of 10. Absolutely love it. Check it out. The only way you can get it, unfortunately, unless you get it maybe at a used market, it's a double album, is through the Bonfire box set. But the other version of the Bonfire box set that isn't an Epic remaster actually had the jeweled cases, and it was a bigger box. So I wish I kind of would have got that one, but I didn't know at the time when I got it that it was any different. So, I was 15. But as far as finding it online, you could probably find it very reasonably cheap in its original jeweled case, the way it was released, but separate from the box set. So I would probably recommend doing that if all you want is the Live in Paris, because it's not worth buying this if all you want is a little bit of music out of it. I will go into further detail on my Bonfire box set further on down in the playlist for AC/DC discography reviews, but I have already done it back in 2014. So if you are not there yet, you can watch it at your viewing pleasure. This is Midnight Strike 3625. Hope you enjoyed watching it. This is also worth it, by the way. You can find this on Amazon or eBay. Keep calm and rock on.